Right, 80 minutes past 7. Let's take a look at something that is close to everybody's heart. South Africa's unemployment rate fell unexpectedly in the last quarter of 2012, and that's according to Statistics South Africa's figures out this week. The unemployment rate declined to 24.9% of the labour force in the fourth quarter from 25.5% in the previous quarter. Now, the question is this good news, or is there a story to tell about the state of joblessness in South Africa? Well, to share his thoughts and his research is a regular commentator and economist at Adcorp Analytics, Loane Sharpe. Always a pleasure to have you on the program.
Thanks, Peter.
Okay, so I pick up the paper on Tuesday and it says to me unemployment rate is down fourth quarter. Is this a cause for optimism?
You know, when the Stats SA figures are released, what they should indicate is the margin of error. So the number of employed people fell by 68,000 during the last quarter of 2012. But the true figure could lie anywhere between minus 220 and plus 80,000. So there's a terrific margin of error. I think the best thing that we can say in the fourth quarter is that employment was flat. I don't think it is a cause for optimism. It certainly doesn't indicate or doesn't include any of the mining and agricultural protests that we saw.
All right, okay, so case then, what are the facts then? What would you say are the headlines that we should be paying attention to in terms of the state of labour in this country?
I think there's a tremendous change going on in the South African economy. The old age sectors like agriculture and mining are shedding jobs. Just for example, in agriculture, employment over the last 15 years has fallen from 2.2 million to just 660,000. So there are some sectors like agriculture and mining where employment is falling, and there are other sectors that are doing very well from an employment point of view. For example, retail and finance. These are very labor-intensive sectors. So there's an enormous structural shift going on in the economy, and that's creating opportunities for some with higher skills, and it really involves the loss of jobs for people with lower skills. I think one way that we can improve and accelerate the pace of job creation is to take a look at some of the labor laws that cite as problematic. So, for example...
So this is where the causes of the drama that we're in. I think there's a graphic that we've got there to list some of those, but to tell us what you see as the problems that employers have.
I think there are two main laws and regulations that employers have an issue with. The first is dismissal protections. There's no separate category to dismiss someone for poor work performance in South Africa. And that's why we see, for example, in the civil service, large numbers of unproductive people. There's just no credible sanction if you don't perform well on the job. And the second issue is that minimum wages are really making employment in some sectors unaffordable, and they're making employment vulnerable to illegal migrants from other countries. I think if we relax dismissal protections and remove minimum wages, all the South Africans who wanted to work would find it.
All right, so policymakers, what do they need to do? Because that's the bottom line.
In the end, it's not going to be feasible to deregulate the labour market. Even the National Development Plan, which is the most business-friendly proposal from government, doesn't look at deregulation of the labour market. The ANC-COSATU alliance makes it very difficult for the ANC to propose labour market reforms. So I think what's going to happen ultimately with policy is we're going to have a few experiments. We're going to give grants to job seekers, subsidies to youth, and a range of other initiatives, and then government will follow those that work.
And how do we appease those people that are on the streets demonstrating?
The way that government is appeasing them at the moment, the great unwashed, is to give them social grants. At the end of this financial year, 19 million people will be dependent on social grants. So basically government believes that we're never going to include those people in the labour market. And really the only way is to give them cash grants.
All right, well, we're going to have to leave it there, but I think this is a conversation we'll continue to have over time. But thanks very much for your insights, Loane Sharpe. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thanks, Peter.
All right, okay. Let's take a quick look at the indicators now, starting with your currencies. Well, the rand was a little weaker yesterday, but perhaps a firmer bias was there with a lack of negative news on the local market. 8.92 the dollars where we closed. Taking a look at the JSE very quickly, that was lower yesterday, weighed down by the banks, while platinum's gained after the price of the metal surged due to supply concerns. So 40,560 is where we closed. In Europe, well, equities there sank to 2-month lows on Wednesday after a run of weak corporate earnings and signs of growing political tension in the Eurozone. The FTSE up to 6295. The DAX and the CAC 40 both down yesterday, but only marginally so, to be honest. Across the Atlantic on Wall Street, US stocks finished flat.